Good. Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's now 2 minutes past 11, so we'll get going. I'm sure the people will join as we move along. Welcome along to today's Tide Masterclass webinar, How to Maximise Your Profits. This is now number 18, I think, in our webinar Masterclass series. I'm really pleased to see a good number of people watching us live. And if you're watching us on YouTube later on after the live event, thank you for tracking us down and good to see you too. My name's Kuhn Hawker. I am the event manager here at Tide. And for those of you who are new to Tide, I wanted to give you a bit more information about what we do. A quick overview of our services. Go on to the next slide, please. So we are the fastest growing online business current account provider in the UK. We currently have around over 200,000 members. And our aim is to provide our members with a service that saves you time and money when it comes to your business banking needs. So we're brilliant for SMEs, for startups, for freelancers, and as there are no credit checks or startup or monthly fees, this allows you to even try us out alongside your current business bank account. So you can compare us where we can save you time and where we can save you money. The sign-up process, really simple. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes from start to finish. When I started at Tide, I timed the sign-up process and it was 4 minutes and 37 seconds from start to finish. So that was a good marker in the sand. But then after those 5 or 10 minutes, you'll get your sort code and your account number straight away, and then you'll get your card a few days later. So you'll be able to start banking as soon as you have your sort code and account number. The app itself, really easy to use, really easy to set up. We've got a huge amount of brilliant in-app products which will make your banking life a lot easier as well. A few of my favorites include the ability to see exactly where your money went and when it went there through our auto categorization tool, easy for me to say. You're also able to send professional fully customizable invoices, which can include your logo. Being able to split your account into 4 sub-accounts as well is really useful. So you can have a sub-account for your marketing, for your tax costs, for your rent spend, or whatever it is that will help you save time when dealing with your business banking. You're also able to have up to 30 cards on one account as well. So anyone in the business can make company expenses, and those expenses are really easy to track and manage as well. I will talk to you a bit later about how you can make sure you stay up to date with everything we're doing here at Tide, whether it's the events, our blog, all that kind of stuff. And I'll also give you some more information about how easy it is to sign up and become a Tide member. Before we get on to introducing the panel, just a quick tour of Zoom as well. I can't imagine there's many people that haven't used Zoom before in the current climate, but just in case, so at the bottom or the top, there is a chat room and a Q&A room. We're doing a Q&A section at the end with the panel, so get your questions in there, and any comments you have, please get there in the chat room. Also keep an eye on the chat room because we'll be putting in any of the links that the panel discuss and some of our links for our social channels and other things that we'll mention later on in the webinar. So now we're going to go on to the introducing the panel. So we go on to the next slide, please. I'm really appreciative to all the panel for taking their time out today. I know they're very busy or have just got back from holiday, Andy. And so I really appreciate them taking their time and their effort to put this webinar together with us. It's going to be really interesting and hopefully really insightful. And let's start with Andy. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andi Jarvis. As Kieran said, I'm just back from holiday, but I'm the founder and strategy director of a company called Eximo Marketing based in Belfast and Liverpool. I help companies develop marketing strategies that really have a bottom line impact is the simple way to put it. I also host a podcast. It's out every fortnight called The Strategy Sessions, where I interview marketers from around the world really about how they look at their craft and lessons that we can learn from that. I should also say I'm a Tide customer and can just echo what's been said about how easy it is to open an account. I've been fighting with a high street bank to open one for about 2 weeks when I started the business, and I think it was about 3.5 minutes it took me to open one with Tide. And I've been a happy customer ever since. So that's my story.
Wonderful. Thanks, Andy. And Sarah. Good morning, Sarah.
Hi, good morning. I'm Sarah Chappell. I'm the Commercial Director of Guerillascope, a media planning and buying agency, and Tide are our clients. So it's very fitting, and I'm privileged to be here today. I also thought I could personally relate to everyone that's registered for this webinar, because alongside Guerillascope, I actually started my own startup business, Morescope, a couple of years ago, which is now the print media buying side of Guerillascope. So I can relate to the audience, I feel.
Great, thanks. I really appreciate you taking the time to join the panel. Finlay, good to see you again. Andy and Finlay have been on panels before, so it's great to have them as a repeat business for us. And how are you doing?
Thank you, Finlay.
Okay.
Yeah, all good, thank you. So, yeah, I'm Finlay. I run a tech-driven accountancy practice providing services to individuals and small businesses. We use and are partnered with Tide and have used Tide for a long while now, and just find that their product and offering are just fantastic. And they're on the same mission as us, which is to make our clients easier and more efficient. We strive ourselves on simplifying accountancy and not overcomplicating things, just keeping it simple with fixed fees and transparent pricing.
Awesome. Thanks, Finley. And last but by no means least, Emma. Good morning, Emma.
Morning, hi. So my name is Emma Lloyd. I am the founder of Big Little London. We are a PR and marketing agency for small businesses and SMEs and startups. And basically our mission is to make PR and marketing affordable for clients who perhaps have a little more modest budgets than what most agencies tend to not get out of bed for. So our mission is to put all of the SMEs on a level playing field.
Wonderful. Thanks, Emma. A really, really strong panel. So before we get on to the webinar itself, I just got a poll that I'd like to run at the start of this session, just so we know who we are talking to. So if you could all take a second just to maybe answer this. It's just about the size of the businesses that we are speaking to. Always a nice, useful marker for us. Let's have a quick look. We usually get quite a strong percentage of the sort of lower numbers, but I can see that's slightly different. Any more, only at 31% people. Give it a couple more seconds. Just a couple more. Anybody else want to answer? We're going to leave it at that. So only 50% of people answered, but this is where we're at. So obviously the slightly large percentage is self-employed, but a good couple of people with over 50 plus employees in the companies. That's interesting. So really good for us to know that. So thank you very much, everybody. Great. So we're going to move on to the next slide, and we're going to talk to Andi first of all. And Andi, it's maximizing your profit has a lot to do with the way in which companies market themselves. And it'd be interesting to know what problems could you think SMEs could have when it comes to their marketing.
Yeah, and I think the big problem that companies of all sizes, certainly SMEs, right from 50, 100 plus people, often have is that marketing strategy confuses them. And that means they have to sort of set up on a scattergun approach to do lots of different things. So you see from the chart on the graph on the screen of this process diagram, which is data strategy and implementation. And so much marketing, as far as I can see, just jumps straight into the implementation. There's this desire for companies to have to do something. So they feel like they have to do something in marketing. So they just run off and start doing it. And I would say just stop and take a little bit of time to create a marketing strategy. Now, there's different ways of having the strategy, and from having the sort of 150-page leather-bound volumes of things, which is probably the impression many people get. It's like, I've got to write this huge document, and the bank will need to see this, or I'm going to an enterprise zone and they'll want to talk about this huge strategy. And I think that puts people off doing it. But when you boil it down to its simplest elements, a marketing strategy needs three things, which is to answer who are you targeting, why would they buy from you, and what are your smart objectives for the next period, usually a year, maybe 2 years, depending on the business. Now, there's a data phase, as you can see, which comes before the strategy phase, which is really asking yourself and looking for all the information to answer these questions. But if you just take the time just to sit down and try and write these down on a piece of paper, sometimes in small businesses, you have these in your head. But other times, it does help to write them down, especially if you've got a few other people in the team. Write these down, stick them up on the wall so people can look at them. So the questions, who are you targeting? It can be called personas, you can call it customer types. There's different things for it, but it's just understanding and being really, really clear about who you're trying to target as a business. And wrong answers, there are lots of different right answers to this depending on your business, but a wrong answer that I hear quite a lot is everyone. We're targeting everyone. Everyone wants to buy our product. They do not. It's just not true. And not everyone wants to buy your product. Even mass market brands that sell to millions and millions of people all around the world, names like Apple and Coca-Cola and things like that. Not everyone wants to buy their product. So if you're running a business in a local area that serves people who can walk in on foot, that's not everyone. So be really clear about that, because the businesses that do this really well can be really clear about who they're targeting, but also importantly, who they're not targeting, because you can spend an awful lot of time and effort doing things for people who are never going to buy from you. So be really clear about that. And then understand why would they buy from you. And again, I'll give you the wrong answer for this. Never, ever, ever ask your friends and family why your product or service is so great, because unfortunately they're the least critical audience you will ever have. Unless your friends and family are perfect target audience for you, never ask them. They mean well, they will tell you everything's wonderful. Unfortunately, your target audience, the people on social media, are rarely that forgiving. So what I would say is be really clear about what reasons people are going to buy from you. Is it because your product's cheaper? Is it better? Now, if it is better than the competitors, you have to understand, does that better have a value to the customer? Because the world is awash. And to go back to an example which is a bit removed from us, but look at mobile phones. Every time a new Android handset comes out, there's pages and pages written about how much better this is than an iPhone. Yet the iPhone seems to continually sell and sell and sell, even though the tech journalists would agree it's probably not a better phone than the Android handset. There's a level that your customer's interested in and prepared to pay, and there's a brand value as well that people are interested in. So if your product is better, you have to understand why and why people are going to pay for that. And be really, really critical about that. And often try and find just customer A, reason A, customer B, reason B, and find out why they want to buy from you. And then set yourself some smart objectives of what you want to achieve. Where do you want to be? How many units do you want to sell in the next 12 months? What's turnover going to be in the next 2 years? Profitability. But be really clear with these. Just growing the business or sell more things is such a woolly objective. Because once you've got that objective, you've got this strategy and you can start to look back at implementing it. And then you start to make decisions of how are we going to achieve these objectives? What activity are we going to do day by day, month by month that is going to help us achieve that? And when you start looking at social media channels, when you start looking at other media options, which I know other people are going to talk about today, you can make your decisions set against this. Are these people going to buy it? Can we get that message across? Is it going to help us achieve those objectives? So that's what I would say. Those 3 simple questions will give you the outline of a marketing strategy, and you can answer it in bullet points on a sheet of paper and pop it up on the wall for you to keep looking at, for everyone to look at when they're in the business. And if we could move on to the next slide, please. One of the key things I think about strategy, and it's beautifully put together, this, and the ugliness of the slide is entirely my fault and got nothing to do with Tide. I forced them to do it like this. But the essence of strategy for me is about deciding what you're going to do. But if you look at the word decide, and the reason the side bit is in capital letters, is that the suffix side comes from the Latin ceda, which means to kill. And if you look at where else you see the word side, the suffix side, it's in words like homicide, regicide, suicide. It means to kill. And what you have to do with strategy is decide what you're not going to do. What are you going to kill? What are you going to get rid of to allow you to focus? Because when you're running a small business, you wear a lot of hats. There's a lot of things that you need to do, from product to customer service, to opening the business, to dealing with staff, to managing your finances. You don't have endless times to get onto marketing. So you have to decide what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, and really focus. And if we can move on again to the next slide, once you've got your strategy, you then need to pick your tactics. And what you will get is, again, friends and family, well-meaning, you've got to be on TikTok. And what they really mean is, I like TikTok. That's what they mean. I like TikTok and I use it, so I think everybody else uses it. Or you've got to be in the newspapers. You've got to be on TV. You've got to be on Facebook. You hear these statements all the time from people, and they mean well. What I would say is, I use this to say, just use this little test to decide before you take up any marketing tactics. And I call it ARM, which is why there's a lovely picture of an arm on the right-hand side of the screen. And ARM stands for Audience, Resource, Metrics. So the first one, is your audience there? Will you find the people you're trying to sell to on this channel? Now, on social media, it can be quite easy, because if you go into their advertising platform, they tell you how many people of certain demographics use their platform. If you're using traditional media, I hate that demarcation, by the way, you're traditional and digital. But if you're using traditional media, talk to an agency. Sarah's going to talk about that, I think, a little bit later on. But using their expertise will help you understand if your target market is on that audience and can you reach them. So use that first, start with audience. Then move to the next question. Have you got the resource to bring this to life? And by that, I mean time or money, generally speaking, or skills as well. So if you're going to manage it in-house, do you have the time or the people to make this happen? If you're going to go out of house with it and bring an agency in to manage that for you, or a freelancer, have you got the money and the time to make that work? Because let me tell you, using freelancers and using agencies does take time. It's not just a case of you write a check and you send them the money every month and then you never have to worry about it again. There's a lot of input that agencies need from you to make this work. But we're back to decide again when it comes to resource. If it's an absolutely perfect fit for your audience, then maybe you have to decide to kill something else to make this happen. So it doesn't necessarily mean, do you just have the time or money now? It means, can you move the time or money from something else if this is absolutely necessary to bring to life? So you have to ask yourself that when it comes to resource. And then metrics. A really simple question to ask yourself: what does success look like? How will I know if I've been a success? So if TikTok is the platform that you've decided is one for you, how do you know that TikTok has been successful for your business? And as a clue for this, likes, shares, views of content don't pay bills. So start your metrics of this. Usually a good sign is that they've got a pound sign before the beginning of them, or a euro sign, or a dollar sign, or whatever currency you're trading in. If the metric that you're trying to measure this against has that sign in front of it, you'll know that this is helping your business achieve those smart objectives that you set out on the first page when you were writing your strategy. If it doesn't, you really need to be critical of should you be spending your time there, and keep asking yourself these ARM questions, audience resource metrics, for almost any marketing activity that you want to launch. Is my audience there? Can I bring it to life? Have I got the resources for that? What does success look like? And if you've got those three things right, your marketing will probably be on the right path. And then you've just got to bring it to life again and again and again, and you'll be able to have that bottom line impact. But that's it for me. I'll be around to answer questions later on. So if you've got anything on there, if you agree, if you disagree, if you think, no, he's talking rubbish, fire the questions in. Let's have the discussion, because I'd love to bring this to life for you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Andy. Really insightful as ever, and some really useful things for our audience to take away. So move on to the next slide. We're going to now talk to Emma. Emma, Andy mentioned the importance of understanding your customers' demographic. Do you think this is enough?
Short answer is no.
Fair enough. End of conversation. Thank you.
Andy touched upon it, and I'll tell you why. The perfect way to sort of visualize this and explain this is by looking at Prince Charles and Ozzy Osbourne.
Sure.
Both born in 1948, both got 2 kids, both married, then remarried, both very wealthy, both into fine wine and cars, but obviously both very different people. So how you understand, and this is going back to what Andy was saying about deciding what to kill, who aren't you targeting, is get into that why. And it's got to be more than the rational. It's got to be more than better, faster, cheaper, because there's always going to be somebody that comes in and does it better, faster, cheaper than you still. So it's got to get into the crux of why you started your business. What problem are you trying to solve? And there's going to be a problem you're trying to solve, because otherwise, as business owners, we just go and get a job and work for somebody else. We won't bother going through the hassle. So really get to the crux of that. And a really good exercise for you to do is to try and get your why into 2 sentences. What is your beliefs as a brand? How do those beliefs tie in with your customers' beliefs? Really get into the emotional side of things, because that's what people buy with. That's why people choose brands. It's because they can relate to them in some sort of way. So try and get that into 2 sentences, and then try and get it into 1 sentence, and then try and get it into 3 words. And then if you can, it's really tough, try and get it into 1 word. And it will take a bit of time, but it's a really good exercise for you to do, because it gets you thinking in a different way about your business. And once you've got that and it's really clear, it's then so much easier for you to create content, because everything hangs off of that, and you'll know exactly who you're targeting in terms of mindset rather than demographics in terms of age, gender, and all of that. So that's my first tip. And if we go on to the next slide, it's not just about obviously the content and everything hanging off of that in terms of why you need your why. It's also how you talk to your customers, it's how you talk to your staff, it's how you talk to your suppliers, it's how you talk to journalists. And of course, what better way to try and maximize your profits by putting your message out there to a journalist who can then put it out to a much broader audience, much bigger than perhaps your own. But how do we actually know whether something is PR worthy? It's got to have genuine editorial value. So I made up this word, third. Is it a first? Is it unusual? Are people talking about it right now? So is it relevant? Is it topical? And is it disruptive in some sort of way? And if it answers one of those 4 things, the chances are is that you do have something that is newsworthy. But really look at it objectively, because as business owners, we can get so engrossed in our own business that we think that it is unusual, and actually it's not that unusual, or we think that it's a first because it's a first for us, but actually it's not a first in the world or the city that you're in or the UK. Is it genuinely a first? So try and look at it from the reader's perspective, because the journalists are there to serve the readers. They're not there to try and make your story fit. And I did this research last year with some football journalists that I was working with at the time. And when Vishali used to work for the Evening Standard, 40% of what she received was just nonsense. And you can see there from the other research that I did, you know, Jeremy at the Telegraph, 35 out of 40 just weren't relevant. And you get to the point where obviously you're just going to switch off from those emails. So make sure that when you are sending something, it's also to the right people, because as much as we always think about profit in terms of money, it's also your time as well. And as a small business owner, we don't have a lot of time. And if you're wasting your time sending stuff to people that's never going to get coverage, there's no point. A perfect example is just to put yourself in the shoes of the reader. You're going to be really disappointed if you turn to the back page expecting to read about Liverpool winning the league and there's some article on there about a health juice drink. It's just not going to happen. So don't send your press release about a health juice to a sports editor. There's a link. Yes, of course, sports and nutrition, but it's not going to get coverage. So don't bother. There is some free resources that you guys can use actually to try and get some PR coverage. So Twitter, whilst it's not the sexiest of social media platforms, most journalists are on Twitter. And if you follow the hashtag journo request, quite often they are looking for comment pieces or new products to review. So have a look on there. A lot of it is from bloggers and influencers, but you do get quite a few really reputable journalists with really reputable publications. And it's just a way for you to be doing that research and building up a genuine relationship with these people. Don't just see it as one-sided. They are as much your customers as your actual customers. In fact, you know, from the B2B side, they have a potential to reach even more customers. So really build up a genuine relationship with those guys. And there's another source that you guys can sign up for, which is called HARO, which is Help a Journalist Out, HARO. That's another free resource where you can receive requests from journalists actively looking for comment.
Perfect. That's really great. Thank you so much, Emma. Some really useful resources there. And I think we've got some of the resources which we'll put into the chat room a little bit later in the hints and tips section as well. So if we move on to the next slide now, we're going to talk to Sarah. Sarah, thanks again for joining us. I think in these times, it's really important for businesses to prioritize which channels to use and when. What would your suggestions on how they go about doing this and the things around that subject?
Yeah, I think as Andi and Emma have been discussing, once you understand that audience you're trying to reach and you understand the message you want to present them with, then I suppose our clients, the first question they say to us is, what marketing mix is going to maximize my profits as a business? So we always start with looking at the role of the media and the role each media channel has across any consumer's path to purchase. So we think of it from the sort of branding, more mass market media channels, such as TV, video, etc., that is there and serves the purpose to inspire, educate your target audience, inform them of what you're trying to offer, straight down that path to purchase to the more activation, tactical media channels, such as search marketing, that really, you know, convert that sale down that sales funnel. So that's what we try and look at. You know, each company, each objective, you know, will have a different purpose, but not all small businesses have the luxury of doing an absolute multi-marketing campaign. So yeah, we think of, you know, which is going to prioritize and maximize those profits. And basically this is the theory that we start to look at. Next slide, please. So the next question that our clients are asking us at the moment is, should we be advertising whatsoever in the current climate? Now, there has been so much research, there's so much opinion across all sectors at the moment, but I think the most concrete research that's been done recently is from Ofcom and Kantar, and basically that's shown in the UK, only 7% of the whole population thinks that brands should be pulling back on advertising right now. It's more about getting the advertising right in terms of tone of the communication. There's no point in pretending we aren't in an economic crisis at the moment. It's about being sympathetic towards that. The research has shown any level of humour or acknowledgement of, you know, what's going on in the world right now is of benefit. And I think, you know, small businesses have a huge opportunity right now. So in terms of the media channels and their performance at the moment, TV and radio consumption has gone through the roof. As you can imagine, we were all locked down, we were all at home. So engagement in those channels has increased massively. Having said that, the number of brands advertising on those channels has reduced significantly too. So for example, even now in August, TV rates, for example, are probably 16% less year on year. So it is an opportunity for smaller businesses to have really targeted strategic marketing plans at a time when consumption's up and actually the rates to get involved are lower. Digital, as you can imagine, even say with the news brands, they're still known as the most reliable source of news, especially during a crisis. So actually the engagement of news sources online has also gone through the roof. Even with print media, it's surprising to say that we're probably looking only a 10–12% decline in circulations at the moment. So again, you know, the media channels are actually reaching more people than ever, and you can, you know, buy into those channels, reach your audience for a lower price than ever before. Social media, again, as you can imagine, you know, everyone is probably engaging more and more with social media to find out, you know, everything that's going on in their local community or nationally, etc. So actually now is probably a bigger time than ever to advertise for a lower investment. And the evidence finalised by saying that those brands or businesses that I suppose are brave enough to prioritise marketing actually will come out of this crisis with more of a market share than if they didn't advertise at all. Okay, next slide, please. So I thought what would be useful for everyone that's registered today is to give you sort of a real life case study of one of our clients. I've had to, on this occasion, call them Brand X. I hope it's relevant to the audience today. It's a B2B SME. And the objectives are probably very similar to any business out there. It's to increase brand awareness and to drive sales. So we launched a 9-week campaign targeting other SMEs for a £200,000 budget. Now, I appreciate that's a significant marketing campaign, but I wanted to use this as an example because it was very multi-channel. That, you know, the company wanted to reach that target audience at various points along their path to purchase, so that they had the reach and frequency with the brand engagement. So I thought this was a nice example. So to give you just a summary of what we did, we started with using Sky AdSmart, a very targeted viewing platform. We targeted just the decision makers of businesses with 50 employees or less. So there was not any wastage whatsoever, as you can imagine. We then tactically used radio and out of home in London, but again, only buying, say, out of home around the commuter tubes and train routes in, and only in the commuter hours, so for a certain time in the morning and in the afternoon. We then strategically did some out of home around the WeWorks office hubs in London, so again, suggesting it's smaller businesses that are using those facilities, so targeting them that way. We then did use linear TV for more of the branding side of that path to purchase. So really, you know, to launch and give national coverage for this brand, as well as the targeted platforms we used. And then never forgetting always a level of paid social media to keep the engagement up with your target audience, and paid search to convert at the lower end of the funnel. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read these results out, you can all read them, they speak for themselves. I think my point here and what's important for smaller businesses to understand now is The technology that is available to us as agencies in terms of tracking is second to none. Gone are the days where, you know, we stick our finger in the air and hope for the best and speak to our clients and they go, well, that didn't work. We don't have those conversations anymore. It's all very transparent. The sophistication in that technology now is excellent. And I suppose that's the reason why Andi mentioned earlier that you should probably work with an agency purely to get access to the resources that we have, which I'll talk a bit about again later.
Perfect.
That's it from here. I'll hand on to Finlay.
Thank you, Sarah. Really, again, really insightful, some really interesting thoughts about. I think the case study really emphasises what you were saying. So really, really great. Thank you so much. So moving on to the next slide, we're going to talk to Finley now. And Finley, we've had obviously some great insight into how companies can maximise their profits and the rest of the panel. But it would just be great as an accountant to hear what you would like to share with the audience as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And thank you guys who went before me. We work with over 250 clients. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we implement in businesses as well as what businesses are implementing themselves. Starting from the top through efficiency. I mean, one of the key things is to save time and automate things that are manual, understand your processes and procedures, and then look to streamline laborious or manual things and to save time where it matters. I think that's a key thing, just to ensure that you're maximising the time that you can spend. Looking at workflows for best practice, obviously you know how you work and the best way of your work being done. So set out your workflows and then follow them. You know how it works best, and don't deviate from it too much, because if you start getting bad habits, it'll ultimately waste your own time, which is wasting, you know, fundamental things for you. Set objectives. I know Andi spoke a little bit about this, and the SMART objectives, fundamental to any business, I would have said. It's key to ensure that if you want to grow, develop, and ultimately excel, set the objectives and make sure you measure against them and just keep them relevant. Because if they fall out of touch with the business, and if you've moved into a different space, then obviously the objectives are no longer relevant, and you're not going to stick to them, and you're not going to hit them. Looking at your sales funnel, yeah. So as you begin with customers, obviously you need to understand the customer journey and look at it with fresh eyes and constantly look at it. Be critical and make changes if necessary, just to ensure that if, as and when you've got customers joining you, their journey throughout your process is smooth. Because if you lose customers before you've even got them, it's not great, is it? You might as well not even have got them in the first place. So yeah, review that sales funnel and ensure that the customer journey is nice and smooth. Looking over at technology then, so we're quite a tech-driven practice. We implement a lot of technology and a lot of new apps. Try the app marketplace. There's probably any app to solve any problem out there now. It's an extensive marketplace depending on what accountancy software that you're on. There's an app to solve any problem, and streamline the processes and make your life easier and your customers' experience better. That's key. I mean, you obviously want to roll things out that make your life easier, but equally things that make your clients more satisfied. Looking at, you know, committed to trialing software, I would say you need to make sure you dedicate the right amount of time to try software and to give it a good go, because there's so much out there. Not everything's going to be right for you, but there will be that diamond in the rough that, you know, works for your business and keeps the business both efficient and, as I said before, keeps your client journey, you know, more satisfied. Looking at subscribing to resources. So as I just said, you know, there's so much resource out there. Don't overcommit to things, because if you oversubscribe, you won't give things a good go, and more than likely you won't get the max out of software, so you won't even know if it does work for you or not. So just try a solution one at a time and just see if the solution is for you or isn't, and give it a good amount of time, but don't hold on to it for too long. And if we could just move to the next slide. So moving on to budgets and resources now. Obviously, when you look at budgets and resources, there's both a time and financial element to those. So you've got your time and you've got the monetary side of budgets. So you need to ensure that could your time be spent better doing other things, and just review what are you doing and what could you be doing instead. Again, it's about those things above that I spoke about implementing technology and saving time, and stop doing things that are manual, which either something automated or an app could do for you, which ultimately increases where you can spend your time. Looking at the budget for implementing new technology. So obviously, if you're going to try and implement a new app, you need to make sure that you've got the right amount of time to do that. Obviously, you're already going to be pretty busy with many hats on, running the business and doing all sorts of different bits. So make sure you've got the right time. And if not, like Andy said, what are you going to get rid of to use that time? And then looking at how do you know you can afford it? So have you even got a budget set up yet? Have you even run the costs? Do you know what your overheads are? Do you know what your variable and fixed costs are? Have you factored in the true cost of your own time? So quite often, a lot of small businesses with one-man bands will run budgets but never put in a cost for their own time. So really, is that a true indication of how the business is truly operational or not? Obviously, eventually you will get paid from that business. So I would say to run a key budget, you want to be putting in something from yourself in terms of a cost, whether that's the true cost or whether that's just a pure cost, is up to you in the budget. And then looking at delegation, so utilize skills available to you. And if you've got a team or if you're looking to take on a team, utilize their skills and put them to the challenge of implementing certain bits of software or, making a certain part of a journey better. You don't have to do everything yourself. And it's key to know when to hire somebody or even whether that's temporary or a permanent resource. And then just an overall sort of business overview, just looking at referrals and repeat customers. I mean, in one sense, it's almost free marketing, right? If you can get it right with your current client base, if they're happy to refer you, then off they go and start referring you to their friends and family and any colleagues that they might have. So get it right with those guys and encourage that they give referrals. And if you're not getting them just on the back of the own work that you're providing, then look at doing, repeat discounts or referral discounts. And then hopefully that will stem onto building your portfolio of clients. Looking at low performers, which sometimes cannot be economically viable. Most people in service-driven businesses will know that they will take clients on who ultimately don't perform and are not viable to keep them running. So what I would say to that is just make sure that if you've got people that are working or clients working with you, that if they're not economically viable and you're actually losing on them, do look at ceasing that relationship in the most professional way possible. Marketing, so the guys before me obviously spoke quite a bit on the marketing side of things. Just, I would say from my perspective, identify your competitors, your target market, and ultimately your marketing budget. Three sort of simple bits that I would say from business side of things, just to really look at before you make any steps into marketing. And then finally, just about the brand. So, know your product and service. Review your internal culture, your processes, your employee satisfaction. The main thing is, why will people remember you? How will people remember you? And why will people work for you? And that's pretty much a roundup from me on the overview of productivity.
Great, thanks, Finley. I think the one thing I took from that is putting the sort of monetary value against your time as a business owner. I think that's something people do tend to forget to do, and like you say, it's really important. So it's something which people need to take into account. So thank you for that. So now going to move on to the hints and tips section. If we move on to the next slide, please. So the panel have just given us a few hints and tips here, and I'm just going to put into the chat room some links which they'll discuss as well. So have a look at those links. I think Finley, was yours the first one? I think, was that right?
Yeah. So mine, as I mentioned in the bit above, I just sort of said, review your goals regularly, because as your business grows, the goals that you set a year ago, 6 months ago, will likely be out of date. So it's key that you keep reviewing those. And I think Andy said, pop it on a wall in front of you. And to do that, remind you of what those goals are, and then you'll instantly know if those goals are out of date or not. And I think that's good to keep them regular, because if you write them down, you shut the book and you won't look at them again until you accidentally open that page again. So just keep those goals in mind, and if you keep the goals, you'll keep growing and adapting.
Yeah. Andy, the next couple of yours, I think.
Yeah, I think just to follow on from what Finlay was saying, when it comes to strategies, I often say, let's just do a year. Some people want 1, 3, 5, 7-year plans. I think from business-wise, a 5-year plan can be a good thing, but from a marketing perspective, so much can change beneath the surface that 1-year goals are brilliant. But in terms of, a tip, focus, back to talking about decide again. And I think everybody's said it in one way or another during this masterclass, is that there is so much demand on your time as a business owner that you can end up, we've all met business owners who are working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it just takes a toll on you. And there's no benefit to doing that in the long run other than ill health, really. So focus your time. Where are you going to have most impact? Pick that and do it relentlessly, and cut everything else. Just cut it. If it's not adding to those objectives that you've set, get rid of them. And my second tip as well is about understanding your audience. Now, I always feel it's easier, doesn't mean it's easy, but it's easier to come into your business to understand them, because you get to have that little bit of face time with them. You talk to them, you understand, you recognize them, you get to know them. That can sometimes have a downside as well, that leads you to assumptions, thinking that the people who are coming in are the only ones you can attract. But it can be a bit easier to understand them. But digitally, do your best to look at the tools that are available to understand your audience, but also don't talk post-purchase, net promoter scores, send out surveys, emails, and talking to people afterwards. Really understand the problem you solve for those customers, and then you can use that to improve what you're doing for your marketing. So they'd be the two, I would say.
Great, thanks. And Sarah, what's from you?
I think I touched on this before, and we all laughed yesterday. Of course, I'd say work with an agency and buy it. Not necessarily with Guerillascope, an agency of your choice. The facts are, though, an agency has resources that small businesses do not. So when it's from, what's already been said, understanding your competitor set, understand where they're marketing, when they're marketing, understanding the audience, right through to, I suppose, an agency's experience, most importantly, buying power, but also, all of that insight, but that tracking capability I mentioned before, which is critical when we bring back the reason we're talking about marketing in the sense of maximising a business's profits. So it is just, we earn commission from the media, all agencies do. There's not necessarily huge fees involved, but you will get the benefit of resource that small businesses will not have access to. So do partner with an agency of your choice. And then finally, something we absolutely live and die by is test, test, test. We don't just test, we monitor, we measure, we optimize, and we continue doing that mid-campaign all the way through. That will be your best learnings. A particular marketing channel might be working so amazingly well for a period of time, but you can't assume that will continue in the long term. So you have to be reactive with the market and proactive within your marketplace and competitor set. I suppose they're the two things, or my hints.
Great, thanks. And finally, Emma, I think the links for these are in the chat room, guys, so we'll talk through them, but the links are there in the chat room for you to go and look at too.
Yeah, so HubSpot Resources is just amazing. I didn't actually come from a marketing or PR related degree at university, and HubSpot Resources is just amazing, especially for a small business owner. There's loads and loads of templates on there if you do just want to crack on and do it yourself. We've spoken a lot about audience and customers and knowing them, but there's a customer profiling a template that talks you through how to sort of build up pen portraits of who your customers are. There's social media calendar templates, and then there's actually more business related ones in terms of what Finley was talking about maximizing your or tracking your profit and loss. So that I would recommend just search HubSpot Resources, and you can basically filter in terms of what your needs are. The other one is Simon Sinek and Find Your Why. And Simon Sinek is the creator of that golden circle with the why, the how, and the what that I shared on my slides previously. But he's done a couple of TED Talks. There's a book which is called Find Your Why. There's a whole website actually also dedicated to it. So that's another really useful resource, that just gets you thinking perhaps on a different level. We can get so, as I said before, engrossed in the day-to-day, working endlessly, just doing stuff, that is actually quite nice to take some time and dedicate it and think back to actually, is everything I'm doing still relating to my core belief as an organisation, why I started this? And then how to attract press coverage is actually an article that I wrote on Big Little London's website, and that was written off the back of the last masterclass that I did with Tide last year, and it also links on to another article about how to write a press release as well. So if you are interested in a bit more detail about how to attract press coverage, because I appreciate 5 minutes is not a long time at all, then just head over to there.
Brilliant. Thank you guys so much. So we're going to go on to the Q&A section in a minute. Please do put your questions in. I just want to talk to you a bit more about what Tide is doing here. So the question's just at the bottom. Stick a question in there, even if it's just to ask Emma where she got her wonderful chair from. That's a pretty question I'll be asking her once we shut down, if nobody else wants to know. But just to give you a bit more information about Tide and what we do. So if you're new to Tide, please do remember to head over to the website, the links of which I will now put into the chat room. There we go. If that's too much effort for you, next week we will be sending, in the next couple of days, we'll be sending you an email, all of you that are attending and all those that didn't attend as well. In that email, you'll find a link to rewatch this webinar, which you can use at your convenience. You can share with people. If you're not one of our over 200,000 members, there'll also be a link in that email allowing you to sign up and start saving your time and your money. All you'll need to do is click on that link, download the wonderful Tide app as I discussed earlier, follow those really simple instructions, and you'll be able to start using Tide for all your business banking needs. For all links to our previous webinars and information about upcoming events, please visit our blog site and our events page. Links are in the chat room. We also, of course, have a wonderful YouTube channel. Please find the link again in the chat room there. Head across, have a look. Look at all our back catalogue as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, then please hit the subscribe button. Let us know what you think as well. Give us some comments about the webinars we've done. Give us a comment about this webinar. Please also let us know if there's any speakers or topics that you would like to hear and see from us. Please leave a comment on the YouTube channel. For people that are watching it live, again, please leave us a message in the chat room if you have any ideas, but I will be running a poll a little bit later just with some potential future topics that we'd like some feedback on. So I'll ask you to give me your feedback on that. And that's it. So yeah, go and subscribe and like us and follow us and stay up to date with what we're doing here at Tide. And also, if you are not a member, give us a go. So now we're going to move on to the Q&A session. Please do those questions. We haven't got anything come in just yet, but I had a couple for the panel myself. Finley, just going back to what you said about putting in monetary value against your time. How do you go about figuring that out? I mean, it's obviously going to be different for every business, but is there a set strategy which is useful to stick to? I mean, how do you figure that out?
Yeah, so I guess you could take it from different perspectives, but if you've worked in that industry before, you will know what your pay rate was before. So that could be a good indication of what you could put as a flat line. Otherwise, you could look at what do you want to earn from the business. And as soon as you start applying that value in, you'll seriously start to see exactly what the overheads truly look like.
Yeah.
If you're reasonable with that value, of course. But yeah, it's a case of a mixture between either where have you worked before in a similar industry, or what are industry averages versus what are you trying to get from that business. Okay,
that's really useful. Yeah, okay, that makes it a bit more easier for me to understand, hopefully for our attendees as well. And then Sarah, just, I mean, obviously you want to get people to come to an agency, and I fully appreciate that. But how do you pick an agency? What are the sort of things you should be looking at? Obviously, again, it's going to be different for every business, but are there marks in the sand we should be looking out for? What would be your sort of top
agency for a business?
Yeah, exactly. So if I'm an SME and I would, as you discussed, having an agency for the marketing can be key. What are the sort of things I should be looking for?
I mean, there's a huge number of different agencies and different skill sets. It very much depends on your business, I suppose. For me, having been in the industry for over 20 years, dare I say it, I think it's very much about the personality of an agency, with the personality of your brand and your business. So at Guerillascope, for example, we actually specialise in challenger brands, startup businesses, airing them on TV for the first time, launching their first marketing campaign. You know, larger brands might go with more global network agencies that have got, you know, much more of a global presence. It very much depends. I suppose once you know what your strategy is that Andy's taught you through, then I suppose you reach out to a few agencies and see, you know, which you feel fits better for you.
Yeah.
I mean, as I say, the resources I talk about, you know, decent agencies will have. I'm not going to lie. It's, you know, that's part of our job. But I've also, I don't know whether we've actually going to put this in the chat as well, Cohen, but each media channel has a marketing body which gives you a huge amount of resource free of charge. So I'll give you some examples. But for print media, for the news brands, there's newsworks.org.uk. Again, that will talk you through the circulation figures, the readership, the demographics of their readers, etc. We have Thinkbox for TV. Again, a huge amount of work is done. I think you've probably seen Thinkbox's TV adverts in the last few months. I suppose it just give you more confidence in, you know, each media channel and whether that's right for you. So you could do that before even speaking to any agency at that strategy stage that Andy's spoken through.
Perfect. Really.
Can I just add something to that, Cohen, as well, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I used to run a digital agency in Belfast, and I think Sarah's right. Personality, do you think you can work with them? Absolutely crucial. But there's always one question that I thought nobody ever really asked. But when you've worked in agencies a while, I think it's a really important one to ask if you're approaching an agency. Talk to them and ask questions about staff turnover.
Yeah.
Because typically the agency world's difficult, and it's difficult to run businesses in the agency world as well. But you tend to see good agencies have staff stay with them for quite a long time. And agencies that aren't doing so well or have problems have a really high staff turnover. Every agency, every company has people coming and going all the time. So don't expect zero, on staff turnover. But if you can, if they're even just the fact that if an agency's tracking that, they're switched on anyway. And if they can give you the figures behind it, that's always a really good sign for me that that agency is looking after its people and helping them grow and develop, because they're the ones. It's not going to be the person you see in that first meeting who's going to be doing the bulk of the work on your account. It's going to be somebody else. So you need to make sure that you know who that somebody else is and that they're going to be there for the long run as well.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, that's a really good point. And if that data's available, really, really important to get that. Emma, I just had a quick question for you. Just on, I think it's the first webinar I've ever had where we've had somebody who's invented a word, so I'm very pleased about that. And so on the third, I just wondered if you talk a bit more about the disruptive bit about that, because I think some people may see that as a sort of negative word, but in this case, I don't think it is at all, is it?
Yeah, no, of course. So by disruptive, I mean, does it disrupt a certain industry? So we talk now about, there's a lot of startups that come in, Tide being a challenger bank, for instance, it disrupted the traditional banking model, and, how bloody laborious it used to be to try and get a business bank account. I actually waited 3 months and then they took me off their system because it was just a nightmare anyway. So very grateful for Tide coming along. So yeah, that's what I mean by disruptive. Are you disrupting a particular industry that's been around for a long time and built up a certain level of trust amongst consumers?
Great. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you. Still got any questions from the attendees? So if you have any, do send one in. I've got one more for Andy, if that's okay, Andy. I think you put into the chat room a link to the blog that you've written about ARM, but I just wondered if you could maybe expand on that a little bit more as we've got time. I think it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, I think what I say to people is that the questions are in an order as well. So first you've got to, once you understand your audience, and it does presuppose that you know who your audience is, but we've talked a little bit about that and the resources available from HubSpot and other places to help you do that. But once you know who your audience is, you can then decide, have a look at the platforms and channels and see if there's a good match. Now, the reality is that every channel will have a match with every demographic in one way or another. People say things like, oh, you can't use Facebook for B2B companies. Well, you can. You really can. There's some great results and case studies out there. Or, you know, don't use that newspaper because it's only an older audience that reads it. But the reality is that some younger people do read certain sites and some older people. What you're looking for is that best fit sort of element where, you know, if you're focusing your time and your money and your effort, you need to be able to focus it on the right platform. And the reality with a lot of social media channels is that they have such wide audiences and so many users. You know, TikTok, for example, I think I wrote that blog when they got to 2 billion downloads, which is a huge number, absolutely huge number of people using it worldwide, obviously. You know, Facebook has this huge penetration in the UK. So the reality is that you're going to be able to find a huge crossover with your audience. But there are channels, especially in smaller businesses operating in local areas, that just don't work. So the first question, if your audience isn't there, just walk away from that channel. Just don't go near it. Don't waste your time. Don't spend any more of your effort on it. Just kill it, leave it. But if they are, and you move on to the next one, the resource bit is probably the biggest question there, is understanding what are you going to have to stop doing to allow you to do this? Or have you got the money to invest in an agency to bring it to life, in content creation? Because anything that's a social media channel or an ongoing channel is going to take not just time today or tomorrow, but the day after, the day after, the day after, the day after. It's just a constant beast that needs feeding. So I remember when Snapchat came out, I worked in an agency, and one of our clients was a well-known beer brand. They came to us and said, we want to launch Snapchat. It's perfect for our audience. And it was a great fit for what they were trying to do. We then tried to put together a quote for them as an agency about how much we would have to charge them to put out frequent stories every day. And do you know what? When you start to look at the time it spends, you think, oh, well, it only takes 10 seconds to film a 10-second video. No, it doesn't. It takes 10 seconds to film it the first time. Then you've got the 7, 8, 9 times, 10 times that you redo it because something's not right. Filter it. Everything takes a lot longer than you think. So you've got to be really clear on that. Have we got the time? If not, have we got the money? How are we going to work with the agency? How are we going to do that? And really be clear on that. And often you have to kill something. You can't just keep adding stuff on top. Because you just end up doing everything really, really badly. So the resource bit is the bit where you need to really spend that time. And often if you find yourself saying things like, all right, well, I can't think of something to stop doing, so I'm just going to do this as well. That's a really good sign to me that you're going to do everything really, really badly. Or it's actually not important enough. If you have to force yourself to say, is doing A more important than doing B? And you've got to answer that question, yes or no. Then actually it forces you to commit to doing something. So that's a real, it's a real sign for me when I've worked with companies and I've said to them, all right, you need to decide what you're not going to do to allow this to happen. And they can't make that decision. It's a fudge. Not everything's as clear cut as that, but a lot of the time there is a clear cut, this has to stop to allow this to happen. And if you can't commit to that decision, let's give it a couple of months and then come back to see if this is really the channel for you. And then the metrics bit, define success. Because at that point, you can always hold yourself to account, your agency to account, your staff to account, whoever it is who's doing it for you. Is what we're doing helping us get to where we want to be? Because once you've picked a channel, there are different ways to implement it. You can use different creative on TV, on radio, different billboards, different call to actions, different landing pages, different content styles. There's so many variables at that stage that you need to be able to hold yourself to account and say, is what we're doing over this quarter, over this year, over whatever, helping us to achieve what we said success looked like? So it's in many ways it's fundamentals of business, and I think this takes me back to something that when I talk to small businesses a lot, they have a really clear view on managing finance, or they've got HR people with a really clear view looking at staff, looking at teams and things like that. And then you ask about marketing and it's all a little bit, well, we do a little bit of this and we do a little bit of that. Put the fundamentals in place and your marketing will improve. I'll promise that. Get the fundamentals in place and your marketing will improve. I'm not going to promise that it'll double your business or anything like that, but by having it written down and holding yourself to account to them, you will improve what you're doing.
Perfect. That's really good. Thanks so much, Andy. And usually we've had no questions today, but I'm going to see that as the content and the panel just being so strong that we answered everybody's questions before they had a chance to ask them. And we're now perfectly at 12 o'clock. So that has brought us nicely to the end of the webinar. Like I said, please do keep an eye out for our emails coming from Tide after this event with details on how to sign up and become a Tide member. And do subscribe to our channels to keep up to date with what we're doing in the future, and our YouTube channel as well, so you can look back at our previous webinars. Just a huge thank you to the panel, Sarah, Andy, Finley, and Emma. Thank you for your time. Fantastic webinar.
Thanks, Kim.
You sort of got a lot out of it, and I'm sure everybody watching this on YouTube or through our blog post will have enjoyed it too. So thank you all so very much indeed, and I look forward to seeing you at future events, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.